All right. Good evening, everybody. We welcome you to Let's Talk About It, our Wednesday night platform. Grateful to all of you who are on so far and those who will be coming on. Pray that everyone had a great day today, and we're grateful that the Lord have blessed us to um, be here and be able to enjoy one another and to have another guest with us this Thursday night. And so we're honored tonight to have with us Lieutenant Colonel Robert Irick. And he's our guest tonight, and he's from South Carolina. And I'm going to allow him to come and introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. And then we're going to get this ball rolling. We're going to be talking about leaving a living legacy, the importance of leaving a living legacy. So, Robert, it's all yours.
Good evening, Bishop Jones, and to everyone. As Bishop Jones mentioned, my name is Robert Irick. I am from Marion, South Carolina. I am the son of Ernest Lewis Irick Sr. and Evelyn Irick of Marion, South Carolina, and who was educated. Who was educated. He passed 20 years ago, and my mother, a nurse. So, approximately 4 years ago, I retired from the military after 28 years of service. And now I currently teach ROTC in high school in Florida. So I've been living in Florida the last few years, actually, quite a few years. And I call Florida home, but South Carolina always is a home, and I think it's Florida. I was raised in the church. My mother was Methodist. My father was Baptist. I was baptized Baptist, and I pretty much went to both churches, but I am Baptist by baptism. And but since then, I have in the military. I have still attended churches in various churches, but most time it's not a congregation. Currently, I'm a member of Covenant Builders in Orlando, Florida, where Pastor Alan Newman is the pastor there. Sir.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much tonight. And I was thinking, here we are in this global pandemic. When I think about legacy, the scripture talks about in Proverbs 13 and 22 that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so, what prompted me to have this discussion tonight is that when I was growing up, we lived in the country, and our parents taught us some valuable things in life. And when they was teaching us these valuable things, such as growing gardens and canning and doing all of the stuff that our foreparents used to do back in the day that not too many people do now, and having to work a garden, man, I hated it. And once I left home and got on my own, and my dad and them stopped doing gardens, I thought this was it for me. I would never have to worry about that again. But you never know what you're gonna have to go back to that you learned while you're growing up. And I thought about how fitting it could be tonight that we talk about leaving a legacy, because most of the time when people hear the word legacy or leaving a legacy, they think it's all the time has to do with money, but it doesn't. And so I wanted to have this conversation tonight, and I want many of you to join in through the chat box tonight as we talk about leaving a living legacy. And maybe you can share with us as we conversate with Robert tonight about what his parents left to him and how he's using it to also pass down to his children. And as it continued to pass down from his children to their children, and on and on and on. And so here we are. We're quarantined. Some of us, we're working from home. Those of us that still are employed, some of us are not. And I think that it's important that we make sure that we take the time to sit down and talk to our kids and make sure that we're instilling some valuable information into them, because we never know when we're going to use it. I had no idea that I would be going back planting a garden, but after seeing everything with this pandemic, when it first started, some of the local grocery stores, they were running out of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get caught again trying to find stuff in the grocery store. So I went back to my roots, what my parents had taught me. My mom is going on to be with the Lord, but my dad is still living. And I use what he taught me, and it's been very valuable and it's been very profitable, because the garden has been yielding a lot of great crops. So Robert, if you can talk to us a little bit about what your parents instilled in you, and how you use that in life as a person, especially serving 28 years in the military. And we want to thank you for your service and what you have given to our country. We appreciate you so much for what you have, those 28 years that you've given our country. So thank you for doing what you did. And so tell us how this affects you, what was instilled into you, and how this thing helped to shape your life, how it's helping to shape your children, and on and on.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is a great topic, legacy, probably one that doesn't get talked about enough, especially in our community. In hindsight, I see that's what it was. When it was happening, I did not. And as I explained, my father, first of all, just give you a little backdrop. He was a he's a World War II veteran. And so he was considerably older when I was born. In fact, when I was born, he was 52. My mother was considerably younger. And being young and him being old, he was already in the principal. Now we're talking about time doing before desegregation. So he was a high school agriculture teacher. I remember going to the school with him and walking through the hallways, and him having to go like on the weekends and on Christmas breaks, doing things, always working. And then he'd work all day. Then he'd come home and work in our garden, which Pastor Jones, when you mentioned the garden, I started having little flashbacks there. And he worked in the garden. Of course, he used to take me out there with him and do stuff. We planted cucumbers. And I have an older brother. Part of that was we would pick them, and then he would take us to sell them. And we would go through the business transaction of that. So when we start talking about legacy, as you mentioned, a lot of people think about money, and that's fine. But we all know a fool and his money soon part. So if he's going to leave you money, you need to have other intangible things, how to manage money, and so how to budget and do things like that in conjunction with the money. But one thing that, well, a lot of things, and I'm going to hit on a few of them, and I don't want to kind of ramble on. I want to get to an end point. But the first thing I saw with him was work ethic. He would work at school, come home and work in the garden, make sure he had time with his kids, make sure we had a well-run life. And I saw that, and I really didn't realize the impact until he passed, and I'll get to that. But one thing, that those intangibles, you're talking about work ethic. And growing up in the church, I saw another aspect that I didn't realize that it was going on until I was older. And I'm reminded of scripture, and train a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it. My father talked about, he prayed, he had faith. And that's something that we don't talk about. We talk about we want our kids to be resilient, but to me, faith and resilience go hand to hand, because you will get knocked down. How do you react? What do you do? How do you get back up? You have to have a belief in something bigger than yourself. So in seeing him doing that, I'm seeing all these things happen. Meanwhile, my mother's a nurse. She's doing working 12-hour shifts, coming home, and no matter what, there was food on the table. Now, I knew things were tight. And sometimes as you're growing up, you see things happening. I knew there were challenges. And he used to tell my wife, honey, it's going to be okay. He'll be okay. And I probably should have been asleep, but I found him on his knees constantly every night, and I said, of course I did not start connecting these dots until I was older. So I see him. So one, I'm thinking work ethic. I'm seeing a faith. I'm seeing prayer. I'm seeing consistency. And as I get older, we start going out to the community. And he was the county agriculture guy. So he used to go to different farms and say, hey, this is when to plant, this is when to do, giving advice. So I said, I really don't want to be here, but I have to go. So I see this interaction with other people. So I see a respect for, for humans, a respect for people. So, and I noticed he always called the person with Mr. This, Mr. That, no matter who the person was. And that was interesting. So, and now on the other side, my mother's working. She's a nurse. So she comes home if they have a fever, she's already, giving you treatment and so forth. So I came from a family of service. And when I think about service, I'm thinking about service to humanity, service to community. And oh, by the way, he was a trustee in a church. So therefore, every Sunday, I used to be in the back room with them when they was counting the money. They gave me the pennies, So I was in there understanding working in church, understanding service. It's bigger than you. And that's a couple things. So I'll pause right now before I go. Is there any other questions or anything that I left out that we need to?
So let me ask you, based on what you saw from your mother and your father and the interactions that your father had with people in the community, in the school system, your mom interactions with working at a hospital, how did those things, seeing those things, shape you to the mindset that you wanted to go to the military?
Well, actually, I did not see this, but my mother and father saw things in me I did not see. They put expectation out there for me. It was, you going to college. I'm like, okay, and whatever you do, just do your best. And my older brother was, I would say, National Honor Society kind of guy. And honestly, I was a B student that had, AB potential. But academics and really achievement and really defining who I was, that part took a while. And one thing I say when you talk about legacy, when you start saying expectation and helping the person identify, this is who my parents are, so I am half of them, so I must have some of this in me, realizing who you are and what you're capable of. So when those things started happening, which really for me didn't really start happening until I was in college, until struggling and finally saying, okay, I'm gonna apply myself and see what happens, and I'm gonna join ROTC just because I can't play football this first semester because I was supposed to be this great football player to go to NFL, and do all these wonderful, great things. But the reality of it is that, less than 1% of players go to the NFL. Two is you need to be playing regularly on a football field, not on a practice squad if you go to the NFL. So I saw ROTC as an opportunity to at least get experience. But one thing I found out when I got in the Army or in ROTC, I may not have been the smartest guy, but I listened and I had a good work ethic and attitude, in which I always got that from my parents. And the whole time of marriage, I tell people I've never seen them argue. And so, of course, as I get older and have relationships, that's an anomaly because I try to pattern myself or model myself after them. And in some areas I was short, and I have conversation with mom now that, how did she do this? And she talks about, it's about that undying love. And she talked about John 3:16, and we try to have that Christ-like love for one another as he has for us. It's about forgiveness. It's about not going to bed angry and those things. So it's intangible things like that, I think, that add to legacy, to know that you can withstand the storms that will come through faith. So also, I think by them doing what they were doing, not only they talked about vision, they gave me a blueprint and an action seeing a belief that I could achieve and do some things. And of course, I think you meet people along the way that help you, and it's tremendous people that I met along the way that help. So faith is important, but it really takes grip when you see it in action in somebody else you know. They pray, it's tough, and you see results. So that helped foundationally my faith and seeing that, and growing up in the church. And like I tell my kids when they ask me something, I say, did you pray about it? And now they understand that's the first question I'm going to ask them. Now the answer is yes. So I'm trying to model what I saw, but now that I see what they were trying to do, they were trying to model Christ-like life. So that's what I try to do too. And I told them if I could get it half right like they did, I'll be all right. Yes.
For those who are watching by Zoom that can put something in the chat box, I want you to put something in the chat box that we can see, something that your parents, whether they're still here with you or whether they're not here with you, something that they passed down to you that now you didn't see it as important then, but you see it important now, especially during this pandemic. You know, one of the things that was passed down that was a legacy in our family, we had a family of 8, 5 boys and 3 girls. And that was during dinner time, everybody had to sit at the table. You couldn't scatter to your own room and to your own little corner and eat. Everybody had to sit down at the table. And it was during that time where we had conversation. How was your day? And everybody had opportunity to input. But I think we sort of got away from that a lot. And as we got away from it, we didn't think it was important, but I think it's moments like that that helps to shape our families and our children as they get ready to go out for life. And I know that during this pandemic, we have a lot of time now that we probably didn't have before that we spend with our kids, because before this pandemic hit, you know, everybody ripping and running, trying to do what they need to do, get home, get what you need to do done, and then lay down and get back up and start your next daily routine. But now COVID-19 has forced us into quarantine where we're inside with our families. And now we can get back to some of those things that we were taught, and now we can pass it down to our children, which is important. And so there's a couple of things that's in our chat box. Let me just read them off. Sister Patrice, she said, my mom had me prepping and cooking at a young age. And I'm sure that prepping and cooking back then has helped you now as you were raising your family. The Johns family saying praying every night before going to bed. Another great thing that's passed down that so many kids and so many families are lacking. When you see these things, it really makes a difference. Jeffco family, being a good steward over money. And Robert, you mentioned that earlier about being a good steward. And Gwendolyn says work ethics and dedication. That goes right back to some of what you saw from your dad and from your mom. But Robert, let me ask you this. And she said also being responsible. Excellent. Let me ask you this, Robert, as you got into the military, what were some of the challenges that you experienced and you were able to get through them based on maybe what you saw growing up with your parents? Had you ever experienced any challenges where looking back and seeing your parents doing certain things that helped you get through some of those challenges when you were in the military? Yes.
I think most of everybody, whether it's military or civilian, they face challenges. A lot of people think the military, because there's such stuff, you know, everything's great, there are no challenges. But the common denominator with the the military and civilian life are people. So you just take people out of society, put them in the military, put a little uniform on them, and think they're transformed. It's a little more than that. So yes, but the one thing, well, there are multiple things, but I say attitude and perspective. It's about not being conformed by your environment and holding on to faith and believe it. And I'll tell you, in the military, sometimes, you saying praying one day, I was praying multiple times a day because I did not know how I was going to get through it. But what I knew, I had to do my part, because you can have all the faith in the world, but you have to do your part, because faith without works is dead. So you have to do your part. So, and keep believing. And even though things that I thought that were not going to work out and my faith was wavering, seemed like somebody came at the right time to say the right things. Okay. And I know some things people meant for my harm, it worked out for me. And I'm a living testimony that things that are planned for you, bad for you, it's your footstep, can be your footstep. And I'm a testament of that over 28 years. Some of the jobs I've had and some of the things, I have had people tell my boss, like, hey, this can't be done, and these things like that. And of course, the boss called me, and I called my people and say, hey, we sure we do? Oh, yeah, we do it all the time, sure. And the funny thing about it, the boss came and see me. We were going out to the site, and you would think it was orchestrated. It's the very thing that they questioned me about happened right in front of my face. And timing can't explain. That had to be God, because there's nowhere in the world I could have called and say, have this at this point, at this particular time, while we're looking in the place we were looking. And all you can do is look up and say, thank you, God, And little things help strengthen my faith. And I think my foundation and faith and belief and work ethic and integrity helped me succeed in those years, because it was tested. People was asking me, hey, I need you to write this. And I'm like, whoa, that's not the case. And one thing, and I talked with my daughter now. Actually, my son decided not to go in the military. He is teaching. He was teaching in high school. He's going to grad school now, and he's working with Shorter University in Rome, Georgia, in a grad position. So he aspired to be a head high school football coach. But my daughter is basically completing her Air Force ROTC training. So she's a senior next year, and she should be commissioned next year and go off in the Air Force. But one thing that this virus has done, normally I missed a lot of birthdays and Thanksgiving. Since March of this year, we've been staying together. And, we have dinner together, just like I did with my parents when I stayed there. We have dinner together, we talk, and we have grown a lot closer. I found out things about her I didn't know. And of course, she's seeing how I am consistently, day in and day out. And, even though it's a bad thing, this virus, but, with me and her, it's been a good thing.
When you said that sitting down and spending more time with your daughter, it reminded me of something. My oldest daughter, when we're together on Sunday evening and having dinner, whether it's at my house or their house, she's constantly saying, let's talk about some things that maybe we don't know about each other. And I'm always one to, let's watch TV, let's find a good movie. But what you do is you get an opportunity to learn about some things that maybe you didn't know about your child or your child didn't know about you. So it's very valuable. And I think that we can never take anything for granted. If COVID-19 hasn't shown us anything else, it has taught us that we can't take anything for granted. When we consider or think that something is going to always be here, it's not. We done quickly learned that through COVID-19, that you can't take anything for granted. And one of the things that I'll never forget, I've had plenty of opportunities to go to the Philippines for mission work, to go to Africa for mission work. And I remember when the pandemic hit and we probably was about a month in it. And I went to one of the stores, I think it was Costco, and I'm looking at these long lines. People got masks on, and they were pushing people, and they were grabbing stuff, and it almost looked like I was in a third world country. And I'm like, man, I never thought that I would ever see myself in a situation like this. Here we are in the United States, and everybody pulling like they ain't gonna never ever get something again. So everybody was snatching and pulling and breaking in line and pushing. And it taught me right then and there that you can't take anything for granted. And a lot of times, because we've had and because we might have now, but it's not determined that you're gonna have that same thing tomorrow. So anything can happen. We've seen that, and it can happen real quick. So I think as we have this conversation tonight, it is very important that we go back and look at some of the stuff that maybe we thought we instilled in our kids that may not be there. So it's always good to go back over it again, refresh our minds. The scripture even talk about it. Write it on the doorpost. Write it on your forehead, wherever you can see it. The more we can be visual with it and hear about it, faith cometh by hearing, hearing by the word of the Lord. So we got to talk and instill these things into our children's head, because at some point we're going to be gone off the scene, and they're going to be here, and we got to make sure that we have instilled some stuff in them that's going to help them to survive. Money can do some things, but money can't do everything. And so I'm grateful that when I went back to test my skills out at what my dad taught us as we was growing up trying to do a garden, I was successful, getting a lot of great stuff out of it. And so it's for those of you that are listening, you got an opportunity. I think it's good to see where your child is, what you have taught them to see, if it's still with them. And it's important. And so, Robert, what are your children, all of them, are they still in school? Are they working on jobs now?
My youngest is my daughter. She turned 21 in January. She's in her last year of college.
Okay.
Well, she'll be working. But what you say is so important, because our kids will be tested. They will be tested.
Yeah.
And the more we can pour into them, I think the better off. At least they'd be informed and knowledgeable, and hopefully it will not come as a surprise. And that's the thing I talk to my daughter, and we talk openly, and I tell her my concerns. I tell her some of the things that kind of make me concerned for society reasons, also her going in the military reasons, and so forth. I'm straight with, but I do believe in faith. I do believe I have to do my part to make sure she's prepared. Just like her going to this camp. We spent days going over things, within the manual, physical things, mentally, and also we talked about spiritual belief.
When you talked about preparation, as preparing your children, because they're going to be tested, and here we are in a global pandemic, and I think all of us are being tested in one way, shape, form, or fashion. Here we are in racial tension. This racism is seems like it's at an all-time high. And who would have thought, here we are in 2020, thinking that we would see stuff that happened back in the 60s, and it's still happening today. And so we have to make sure that we instill those important things into our children. Like, how do you deal with an unexpected situation, such as a lot of our kids, they went to high school, they were expecting to graduate, they did, but they never got an opportunity to walk. How do you deal with that? That's an unexpected situation. Those who were in college, went to college, they got good grades. They got out of college expecting to go into their career job, only for everything to come to a halt, and all that you had worked so hard for, now you at a halt, and that dream job is on hold. So the question is, what do I do now? How do I bounce back? How do I keep myself from getting depressed and discouraged? Because now my dream is on a hold. It don't seem fair. I put in the time, and now it seems like I'm stuck. So we have to make sure that we teach and share with our kids to know how to deal with unexpected situations. Did you ever in the military deal with a situation that you didn't think that you would see or be a part of?
Yes. There was a situation where my immediate boss basically said that, you're no good, you won't be here, and I'm going to, put it on paper for you. And so I'm thinking, hey, well, it was a good run. It's over. I only have a few years in here, so I guess I'll go on and do something else. And so I waited for basically, the not promotion, but the letter saying you did not get promoted to come. What came was you are promoted. And I'm like, wow, And then I spoke with some people and said, hey, we saw this and we thought something else in this, so we added, a counter into it, so that it basically cancels that bad thing out. So and I said, wow, there are people that care, will help you. So again, I owe it to the next person, do my best to help them. And I try to explain that to my daughters. Not everything, my son. Not everything is going to go right, but what do you do next? And I talk to them about discernment. You can't fight every time. There's a time and a place, and you have to be wise on when to engage and when not to engage. So that's part of fighting your battle. It's all about timing. So I just ask for that spirit of discernment. So when and when not to, sometimes you need to hold your tongue until another time. And it's not so much what you say, but how you say it.
That is so important. That is so important. Especially when it comes down to whether you're in a relationship, whether you're in a marriage, or whether you're working on a job. You got to pick and choose your battle. You don't have to fight them all. And you got to make sure that if you plan to fight any of those battles, you're going to have to count up the cost. And we talked about this in Bible study for the last couple of weeks. You're going to have to count up the cost for you not using wisdom and having a hot head in a situation where you need to stay calm, but you choose to go a different direction, and now you're jobless. And so what do I do now? So there's so many lessons that we can pass down to our children. Wisdom, certain scenarios, things going to happen in life. We might not be able to know what all that's going to happen, but based on what we have experienced, we should be able to share with our kids about certain things, because the scripture says there's nothing new under the sun. And so things are going to happen. And I think this conversation is fitting and it's important, because when we get off of here tonight, when this topic is over, those of you who have children, or those of you who may have godchildren, and you're interacting with them, it would probably behoove you to sit down and have a conversation and see if some of the things that you instill into them are still there. And then challenge them in a situation just to see, because we're not going to always be here. My mom died at a young age. She passed away at the age of 55. And I was just getting started, had just announced my calling to the ministry, thinking that, you know what, she's going to live to be an old lady, and I would have plenty time to spend with her, but you just don't know when it's going to be your last time or your parents' last time. So it's important that we take time to sit down and share stuff, because we never know. Robert, tell me, you say your mom was a nurse, a doctor, a nurse?
Yeah, nurse. My mom was a nurse.
Uh-huh. And based on what she did, how did that impact you? What were some of the things you talked about? Some things that you've seen your dad do, going into the community, educator. But what did you see in your mom's life that helped to shape a part of your life as well? What were some of the things that she passed down to you that helped you become the man that you are?
Sorry to interrupt you, but the thing that hit me most with her, of course, she worked hard. She made sure that we had food was prepared no matter how much she worked. But compassion, she was almost like the neighborhood nurse, even to this day. And 2 weeks ago, we celebrated her 83rd birthday. People calling and getting medical advice. I'm like, Mom, you sure you need to be doing that? But anyway, compassion. She used to, go to people's house and check on the elderly, which she still does. But nothing I saw back then. They used to have I hate to say the old lady prayer meeting. They used to rotate houses. So of course, if Daddy went home, we had to go with the prayer meeting. My brother and I. So of course we'll go to the house, and she's a praying woman. My dad is praying also, but they were praying, and that's one thing that I saw consistently and still see with her to this day. And I talked to her a few minutes ago. She said, "Oh, I just finished reading the Word." I said, "That's great." So that consistency is pretty much in my DNA, and I can be consistent at doing stuff that's not good or stuff that's plentiful, like reading the Word and trying to strengthen my foundation, and letting my kids see me read the Word. So I can mirror what I saw. They can see in me what I saw in my parents.
That compassion that you saw in your mom, how were you able to use that in the military?
I think, caring, it's simple, it enables me to love my neighbor. Even though I may disagree with you, I may not like things you do, but, I will help you and do what I can. I'm not going to hurt you. And that's how she has been and still is. And my father too, and I didn't realize until he passed at the funeral, so many people came to me and say, "Hey, your father did this for me. Your father let me borrow his car." And we talk about in the 70s to go get licensed. Your father did this for me. Your father did that for me. I'm like, wow. He was not only, kind of talking about being nice, doing things, he did things. And that servitude of being a servant, and we started talking about Christ, is like, being a servant. So, again, I did not connect all the stuff till I was much older, but it's like, servitude. That's what we do. And that's why I do what I do now, is I just try to help the high school students, mainly 11th and 12th graders I deal with, have them become better people, realizing that, their self-worth, they're worth something, and they can be what they want to do if they apply themselves. And whatever you decide, whether to go to college, trade school, because I won't say a college degree is the end-all be-all, because now there's so many avenues you can do to be successful if you apply yourself. There's trades out there. We always need electricians and plumbers. That's one of probably the quickest vanishing workforces that are out there. So you can do and have a good life, but you have to want it, and you have to, apply yourself. And once you're there, you have to show some discipline.
And I'm sure working with 11th and 12th graders can be challenging.
Yes, it can be. And I often tell myself, and I even apologize to my mom after spending some time, I said, I hope I wasn't like this. We have a time now where we have kids that's 15, 16, 17, they know more than the adults that's there. So you try to tell them, like, you need to say things a certain way, and how you address people. Like, oh, that's so old school. No, this is how we do it now. I said, well, you're putting a constraint on how far you're going to go, because until you're making decisions in your own place, then you're going to be working for somebody. So in order to make change, you have to rise to the level where you can make that change. If you always stay at entry level, you won't affect change.
I'm looking at the chat box, and the Harrison family put in some of the things that was passed down to them. One of the things was never be ashamed of any honest job. And, you know, sometimes we can have that mentality if we don't teach our kids properly that they ain't gonna work for this person and they ain't gonna work for that person. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. My dad always used to say, son, you got to crawl before you can walk. And a lot of times I didn't understand it. I'll never forget this one time that I saw my dad, and it stayed with me to this day. I probably was about 9 years old. My dad used to drive trucks for southern states. Being that we were in the country, he would go around to farmers' farms and he would spray their crops. And I remember him coming home because where he had to go was coming right by where we lived. So he stopped, had lunch, and when he got up from the table, I saw him bend over and I saw this look on his face, and I'm like, what's wrong? He was in excruciating pain to the point where he almost literally climbed the wall. And we didn't know at the time, but we found out after the fact that he was having some problems with kidney stones. But I remember that day, and I said to him, I said, Dad, I said, why don't you stay home and just don't go back to work? And he said, son, when you get my age and you get children, you're going to understand why I need to go out. I'm not going out because I don't want to stay here, but I'm going out because I got a family to take care of. Even in his pain, he still went out and provided for his family. I never forgot that. And there have been days when I felt bad growing up, when I had to provide for my family and I was feeling bad. I never forgot that scene that I saw and that conversation I had with my dad. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And it's important for our kids to know this, that there are going to be some times when you don't feel like going, but because of the responsibilities that you have to go.
Yeah, and I think, that is a great example how, him showing you what's right. And that remind me, as you mentioned a couple of things about doing what you have to do. I can't even remember my dad missing a day of work. So I thought it was just expected for me to go to school every day. And as a matter of fact, I think I received a perfect attendance from 1st through 11th grade. Only reason I didn't get one in 12th grade, I got sick and missed a few days. So, I mean, that's the mentality I have. I got to show up. I got to be on time. I need to be prepared, and those things. And those things in the military took me a long way. But another thing that hit my mind when I was walking through the school with my dad would stop and pick up paper. And I'm like, Dad, hey, you're the principal. Why are you picking up paper? He said, it's my school. And the gentleman that used to clean the school, Mr. Spry, they would have a conversation. He called him Mr. Spry, and it was the utmost respect for everybody. Teachers, students, the janitor. It was just Mr. This, and that's one thing I adopted now that he did. He referred to his students at the time as Mr. and Ms. And I said, I'm gonna try this. And it does make them kind of react a little slower. We say Mr. this and Mr. that. So, and these are things that are passed down that I think on a relationship, a humanistic approach that kind of de-escalate situations and also kind of say, hey, I respect you, so I want you to respect me.
I want to go back to a piece that we talked about earlier, and the Jeffco family put it in the chat box about being a good steward over money. When I was small and my dad was working, like I said, it was 8 of us, 5 boys and 3 girls. And I remember seeing my dad's envelope. They would give him every week an envelope with cash money in it. They would already have cash when it was time to get paid. And on that envelope, it said how much you made. It showed you what they were taking out, and then it showed you at the end of the total of what you brought home. And I remember seeing that brown envelope every week when my dad brought it home. And unless he had overtime, it was the same amount every week with 8 kids, and it was $122 every week. Every week. And we were able to eat every day. Now, we may not have had the finer stuff in life. We didn't have any of the designer clothes, but what we did have, it was clean. The food that we did have, it was enough. And if we had any leftovers, Mama would use it for the next day. And just thinking in my mind now, $122 a week with 8 kids, and Dad and Mom was able to manage that money to make sure there was a roof kept over our head and that we had food on the table, that we all had clothes and whatever other necessities that had to be paid. Electric bill, light bill, all of those things, car payment, and they still somehow managed to make sure that we never went without. Again, we didn't have the finer stuff in life, but we were never homeless. We always had a roof over our head, and there was always food on the table. And so that's important. I saw it in the chat with Ella Jeffcoat put it in, and then I heard you mention it earlier.
Yes, sir. Stewardship is so important, and that's one thing, one of many things we talked about. He actually showed me, and actually, as I mentioned earlier, in our garden, part of it was dedicated to cucumbers, and we picked them, we took them to market, and then we got back. You know, he took us to the bank. We established a banking account. During the summer, South Carolina, you know, back in the day, you know, you went and cropped tobacco. He sent us to the tobacco field, and went out there, and I think they treated me wrong because they don't pay me $4 a day, $4 for half a day. But in that, you know, I was coming back and putting, like, you know, after a week of work, maybe, you know, $10 or $15 in the bank. So it was like, save, you know, how much you gonna pay your tithes? That's where paying tithes came in, you know, and I saw him do it. He talked about it because I used to check the program. I could read then, you know, because every Sunday they put what people put in the financial report. So and he put it in there, you know, so it became, you know, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I tell that to my kids now, you know, when they, especially in high school, late in high school, we started establishing them a banking account. Now both of them working, they kind of, you know, they're managing back. We talk about finances. We talk about what kind of life you want to live. You know, are you paying your tithes? What vision do you have? Where do you want to be 10, 15, 20 years from now? You know, so if you don't plan for it, you're not going to be there. And, you know, if you don't put some timelines against your plan, it's just a dream. So you know, we talk about things like that, and my son's kind of slow with it, but he's catching it now, and he's regurgitating stuff to me like what I told him, and he's telling me like it's new information. So, you know, I have to bite my tongue, like, really, you know, but now he's getting it. So that's the important part. And my daughter listens to this, and she's taking it all in. So she'd rather spend my money than her money, you know. But you know, so they're understanding that about stewardship. And I said, you know, you can't beat God's giving. And I asked them to look at their lives and things that have happened, you know. So it's all about being faithful to God, keeping God first, and living the best you possibly can, you know.
That's excellent. Now, as we're coming to a close, we got about 10 minutes, but I want to do something real quick, and I think it's going to be fun. And I'd like for everyone on tonight to participate. What I'm going to ask you to do. Now, most of us, when we were growing up, if not all of us, we were growing up, and there were certain things that our parents said to us. It didn't make sense then, but it make a whole lot of sense now. It almost sounded like it came out of the Bible, out of Proverbs. It probably did. It probably was something similar to what was said in Proverbs, but they had their own little spin on it. But if you those of you that are on, if you can think of one thing that your parents said to you that didn't register then, didn't make sense to you then, but makes a whole lot of sense to you now. If we could just do that little quick assignment so we can see some of the things that were said to us and it didn't make sense, but now here you are, you are grown, you got your own family, and now some of those things are coming back to us. Now, I laughed at this one that Ella Jeffcoat put in. He said, this is hurting me, then it's more than it's hurting you. And seeing that right there gives me a flashback of what he said. It caused me to think about when I got a whooping. And my parents was putting that smoke on me, and they said, this is hurting me more than it's hurting you. So that was something that's passed down. Sister Gwen, she says, the grass is not always greener on the other side. All of these little things that they said, it was so important. And we looked at it at the time when we heard it like it was like, we probably rolled our eyes like, what in the world are they talking about? But now we can understand grass is not always green on the other side. Well, you can look over and you can see maybe your neighbor's grass does look greener than where you are, but you don't know what's going on behind the scene. You think everything looks good, but just because it's green, it don't mean that it's good grass. And so another one is keep living. You're going to understand it in time. Absolutely. Absolutely. Robert, can you think of some of those little phrases that your parents said that make you think about it now? But it didn't make sense back then, but it make a whole lot of sense now.
Yes, I can, and we did that. It kind of made me laugh a little bit because I can hear my mom telling me, everything that glitters is not gold.
Oh, yeah. Look, Sister Cheryl put in the box, she said, life is a series of choices, so choose well. Absolutely. Everybody that smiles in your face is not your friend. Yep. All of those things that was said to us growing up, it comes back to us now. It makes a whole lot of sense. And so we have to make sure that we continue passing these little words of wisdom and lessons down to our children, because it worked for our foreparents, and it worked for their foreparents, and it's working for us, and it's going to work for our kids if we take the time to instill it in them. So my goal was tonight was to just have this conversation and understand that, yes, our parents can leave us money, but we know if you're not a good steward, you're not going to handle your money well, and you'll end up like the prodigal son, taking your money out and wasting it on crazy living, and then you're broke, and now you don't have anything. So again, whether we think it's important, I wanted to spark something in all of us tonight so we can have a conversation with our kids and talk to them. We got the opportunity now. We're in the house with them all day. So we need to take this opportunity and make sure that what we're passing down is profitable. Let's see, anybody else have something else you want to put in the chat box before I give Robert closing remarks? Or do you have any questions for Robert that you might want to ask him? Now, my daughter is always the wisecrack, and she put in the chat box, going to see a man by the horse. And my dad used to say that all the time when he was going somewhere, and I'd ask him, where you going? I'm going to see a man by the horse. And pretty much that meant it ain't none of your business. So that sticks with me well as well. And I say that to my kids. Dad, where you going? I'm going to see a man by the horse. So if any of you have any more of those little wise words, put them in the chat box so everybody can see them, just to see if they look familiar. And while you're doing that, I want to give Robert an opportunity to have any type of closing remarks that he wants to have before we bring this to a close.
Okay, and as you said that, I thought about what my dad used to tell me. I'm going to see a man about a dog, and I'm like, he's come back and said, "Where's the dog? Where's the dog?" So of course, I did the same thing with my kids, and they said the same thing. So that just made it all fun. So when they say, "Where's the dog?" Then I thought you was getting a dog, but really, Bishop Jones, everything. Hey, thanks for this opportunity. It was great discussion about legacy. And one thing that I think is so important and to think about, it's real important we let our sons and daughters know about their self-worth. If we look at the news and everything, and so much of history is left blank or left absent by, I think, by design. Yes, our ancestors were brought over in chains, but our ancestors were not poor people. They were kings and queens. If you look at places in Africa, and I had the opportunity to go to Africa in the military, the Nairobis and these cities, it looks like New York. We were kings and queens. We were intelligent people. Actually, Egypt is in Northern Africa, the pyramids, which they're still trying to figure out. We were smart people. We are smart people. And it's real important that, the young people, especially the ones I see in high school, because they know, all they know is what has been transpired, what they see on TV, or what's in the history book, which is incomplete. So it's really important for us to let them know they are important and they are worth. They have self-worth. They're people, way before them have worth. So they should have worth, and they have something to live up to. The legacy, what does your name mean? What will you add to it, or will you take away from it? So a legacy is bigger than you. You're supposed to be a continuation of it, not the one who ends it.
Another one of the sayings that they used to have, boy, as long as you live, your dad will never die, because I see him so much in you. And, you're right about our history. Our history as African Americans, it's not in the history books. They're not telling the whole story or any of the story, if you want to really be truthful about it. And so we have to take time to share with our children about our history and where we came from, and how all of this got started, and why we're seeing some of the stuff that we're seeing now. If we don't take the time and implant it in them, then somebody else out in the street with the wrong knowledge is going to put something into them that's not really correct. So we have to make sure that what we instill into them, it's going to stick. And so when they grow up, won't nobody be able to deceive them and tell them something different. We will know that we've done our job. Once we've gone off the scene, we planted as much as we can plant into them, and prayerfully what we planted into them, they will use it and pass it on down to their children. So thank all of you for joining in tonight and sharing with us, and the little exercise that we did. And I challenge you, those of you who watching, as I said, that have children or godchildren, set them down, have a conversation with them, see where they are, see what's in their minds, and how they look at certain things and how they respond to certain things. And it can help us to know whether or not what we got to go back and work on. So again, thank all of you. And if you could, I want to give a shout out to my boy, Michael Sturdivant. Again, I call him the mayor. He's the man. He's always looking out for me when it comes down to let's talk about it. And when I said to him that I wanted to do something with legacy, he said, Bishop, I got you. He said, I know the right guy. He said, I'm going to introduce you to Robert. And he said he'd be excellent for this platform that you want to do. So Robert, thank you. Sturdivant, if you're listening, if you're watching by Facebook, thanks again, man. I will be talking to you probably sometime tomorrow. But again, thanks for looking out for the Bishop and our platform on Let's Talk About It. And so New Life, if you could do something for me, if you could just give Robert some shout outs and tell him how much you appreciate him being our guest tonight, I would so appreciate it. So take this time everybody, please, real quick, just get in the chat box and let Robert know how much you appreciate him taking the time to be with us tonight. And hopefully he'll be able to see what's in the chat box and the thank yous that's coming from those who are on tonight. So we definitely appreciate it. And you stay safe out there in South Carolina. And our prayers are with you and your family. And again, thank you for your service in the military for 28 years. I don't know how often you meet people and they tell you thank you, but we're going to say tonight, thank you for your service. Thank you for being our guest tonight, and we really appreciate it.
And thank you, Bishop Jones. Thanks, everybody watching, and may God continue to bless you.
All right. God bless you, everyone. We'll see you next week. We'll let you know early next week what our next platform will be about. So thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We love you, and we'll see you next time. God bless everyone.